Hi, this is Donna. Welcome to DD Paper Crafts. In today's video, we're making this Lighthouse look box. This is the internal box, and this has got a base of 4 3/4 times 4, and this is just over 6 inches high. And this actually fits inside the outer shell of the lighthouse. And then we also have another box in the top, like so. And this box is 2.5 inches high, and it's approximately 2 3/4 inches across. Overall, the height of the final piece is about 11 inches. It is quite a meaty project, and it will probably use about half a dozen sheets of cardstock, so just bear that in mind. You don't need any specialty dies for the project, and we will in fact be making all of the hexagons ourselves. So without further ado, let's put the project together. We're going to start by making a template, which is going to help us create the main structure for the lighthouse. And I have a scrap of cardstock, which is 6.5 inches by 2 1/4 inches. Along the 6.5 inch side, score at 1/2 inch, and then fold and burnish that tab, and then put the piece back in the scoreboard with the 1/2 inch folded under. And we're going to make a pencil mark along the top edge at 3/8 of an inch and 1 7/8 of an inch. You may want to draw lines in with a pencil first. You might want to go straight in with your trimmer, but what we're going to do is cut from the right hand pencil mark down to the bottom right hand corner, and the left hand pencil mark down to the bottom left hand corner. I'm going to go in with my craft knife and ruler, so I'm going to line my craft knife up with the top pencil mark, and then butt my ruler up against it and cut straight down like so. And then I'm going to just rotate the ruler slightly so that I can cut straight up within the tab, just to detach that side section like so, and then do the same this side. So that's our template, and I'm just going to rotate this and just slightly take a wedge from the ends of the 1/2 inch glue tab. So that is our side section for our lighthouse. What you want to do now is take your base cardstock, and if you're using single-sided pattern cardstock, I would recommend that you work on the reverse. So I'm going to start with my piece in this orientation and draw around the template. And where the score line is, I'm just going to put a little line to the left and to the right. Like so. Lift the template off, line the left hand side up with the template with the right hand side of the pencil line that we've just drawn, and draw again. And I'm going to continue this for as many as I can fit on this sheet of cardstock. So I can fit 4 on this piece of cardstock. So I've got room for a 1/2 inch glue tab here, and then I'm going to take a second piece and do exactly the same, but I only need 2. So that's the side pieces for our structure. So the next thing we want to do is bring in your stylus and ruler, and you're going to repeat this process across the 2 pieces of cardstock. If you imagine this is the first section, so you're going to score on the right hand pencil line of this section here, then it will be this pencil line here, this pencil line here, and this pencil line at the end. So the only place that you won't be scoring will be this left hand pencil line here. Then rotate the piece, and we're going to score between the pencil marks which indicate where the 1/2 inch tab starts. So between here and here, like so. So that's those 4. Then if you bring in your second sheet, again, we're going to leave the left hand line, we're going to score down this central one, the right hand one, and then join up across the top for the tabs as we did on the previous sheet. The next thing we want to do is cut this out. I'm going to rotate, so I'm going to cut down the glue tab and then down the left hand side. I'm going to cut along the bottom, like so. Just going to cut that excess card away. Now I'm going to cut approximately 1/2 inch from this right hand side score line. It doesn't have to be exact, but you want enough so that you can create a glue tab. I'm going to cut a wedge from that end, cut diagonally up towards the pencil mark on the score line, and now I'm going to cut around the top. That's our first section, and then we're going to do exactly the same on this piece. And again, when we get to this right hand side here, we're going to add on the 1/2 inch glue tab. So these are the 2 pieces, the 6 sections for the outer structure, and the next thing we want to do is fold and burnish along all of the score lines. So once that's folded and burnished, we're going to add glue to our long glue tab and join up our 2 pieces. And then we're going to add glue to this long glue tab on this side and complete the hexagon. And you want to try and concentrate on getting these score lines lined up, because you can always trim around the bottom if you need to. So then I'm going to bring this over, add glue. So that's the main structure of the lighthouse completed. The next thing we're going to do is make our template for the top. So we're going to make our own hexagon. If you have nesting hexagon dies, you want one which has got sides which are 2 3/8 of an inch long. So I have a scrap of cardstock which is 4 3/4 inches times 4 1/8 of an inch. Have the piece in the scoreboard so you've got the 4 1/8 of an inch across the top, and you want to make a pencil mark across the top edge at 2 inches and a 1/16. So I'm going to put a pencil mark on the downward notch to the right of the 2 inch mark, like so, and then rotate the piece 180 and do the same. And then I'm just going to join those 2 pencil marks up with my ruler. So we've split the cardstock in half effectively. Place the piece in, so we're going to work on the long side, and you want to make a pencil mark at 1 1/8 plus a 1/16. So 1 1/8 plus a 1/16, and then you want to do the same at the downward bar to the right of the 3 1/2. So your pencil marks, if you bring in your ruler, your pencil marks are going to be 1 1/8 plus a 1/16 from the outside edge of the cardstock. So 1 1/8 plus a 1/16, 1 1/8 plus a 1/16. So then rotate the piece 180 degrees and you're going to do the same. So 1 plus a 1/8 plus a 1/16, 1 1/8 plus a 1/16. And then we're going to join up these lines. So you've split your cardstock into 6 sections. So let's remove it from the board. So if you measure the gap between the 2 lines at the top, it should be 2 3/8, which mine is. You're going to line your ruler up with the top of the pencil line and bring it down to the end of the pencil line on this right hand side. So if I put my pencil there, rotate my ruler around, and you should find that the length of the side that you're going to draw in is 2 3/8. So if I draw across from pencil line to pencil line, that length of that line there is 2 3/8. And I'm going to follow that process all the way around. So put my pencil line on the top. Now it doesn't matter if you're a smidge out, we just want to get this hexagon to near the size that we need it as we can. So that is our first hexagon. So what we want to do is cut this out, and we're going to use it for a template in 2 places. I want to make sure I get really accurate cuts on this, so I'm going to use my craft knife and ruler. So the next thing I'm going to do is take an offcut of the cardstock, and I'm actually going to cut this out twice, and then I'm going to put one to one side. Draw around this one, and then I'm going to draw around it again. And then you want to cut those out using your scissors or your trimmer or your craft knife. So that's our 2 hexagons, and then you want to put one of those to one side for later. And bring in your scoreboard. So this is going to make this part a little bit easier, I think. So if you sit your hexagon in your scoreboard this way and take your ruler, line your ruler up with the 3/4 of an inch track. Make sure it's running vertically, and we're just going to faintly draw a pencil line across at 3/4 of an inch on all sides. So I've done that one. I'm going to rotate, and what this is going to do is it's just going to help us when we come to add this onto the top of the box. It's going to help us maintain the top hexagonal shape, as it were, of the piece that we're adding on. So once you've seen this, you might feel that it's not actually necessary. Okay, so I've added in this border. Okay, so bring in your structure, and the first thing I'm going to do is just make sure that any of my tabs aren't overlapping at the top. So if I put this roughly into shape, I can see that these ones are overlapping. So I'm just going to take some from there and some from there. I'm going to add glue to the top tabs, and I'm going to use my construction glue because that's going to give me the strength, but also give me the time to maneuver the piece as I need to. And I'm going to turn this upside down and sit it in using the lines that I've created as my guide. I want this to sit in the middle. So you can see here, I originally did my lines at 5/8 of an inch, but I've edited in that you need to do it at 3/4. So once I'm happy that that's in the right place, I'm just going to go in from the top and just burnish down the tabs. So that's created the platform. Next, we're going to make the railings to go around the outside. And for this, you'll need 2 pieces, which are 7 5/8 times 1.5. Along the short side, score at 1/2 inch. And then along the long side, you want to score at every 2 3/8 of an inch. So it will be 2 3/8, 4 3/4, and 7 1/8. And you'll do that twice. You then need to decide whether you want to cut any aperture or any posts or anything into these sections. So for instance, if I show you on the prototype here, you can see this has got a solid wall. You might want to maybe cut an aperture in like so, or you might want to cut some sections out so that they look more like railings. So you need to do that now before we stick the piece onto the structure. So I have prepared my railings. I've marked 1/4 of an inch border around within each section and then just gutted the middle. But obviously you might want to, as I said, have yours vertically or leave this as a solid piece. Or you might have some paper that you could stick onto the solid piece, which is going to create the effect you want. So once you've cut your pieces or not, you want to, particularly if you've cut them, very gently fold and burnish along all of the score lines. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is add in our glue tabs. So I'm going to start by cutting away the bottom intersecting corner. Take a wedge from the end of here. Now obviously I've cut 1/4 of an inch in, and this is a 1/2 inch glue tab, so I am going to just cut away the excess from that glue tab. Then I'm going to cut up each of these score lines within the 1/2 inch tab, and then again I'm going to take a wedge because we're going to work these around the hexagon and we don't want the tabs running over one another. So I'm going to shape those like so. So now we're going to join our railings together. So I'm just going to sit this over and just check whether I need to trim that anymore. And I'm just going to trim that and straighten that up a little bit. So let's add some glue onto here, join these two together, and then I'm going to join up the other end like so. Flip this over, add glue onto these tabs, bring in my lighthouse structure, and I'm going to sit this on the top and line the edge of my railing up with the edge of the hexagon. And you should find that they sit nicely on top of one another. Now, if anything, if the hexagon's slightly too big, don't worry. The railings can sit slightly inside of the hexagon. It's not going to spoil the look. If there's any major discrepancies, then you could go around afterwards with your scissors and trim anything away if necessary. So I've just got a slight excess there that I might want to trim away. And then once I'm happy, I'm going to go in and just burnish that down. So whilst this is drying, I'm going to sit it that way up and just get rid of the pencil lines which are left behind. So that's our railings in place. We're going to stick the box or the Lightroom on. Decide whether you want to cover this in another hexagon. So what you could do is use this to cut out of your pattern paper and then maybe just trim a 1/16 off of each side so that it fits in the top like so. So the next thing we're going to do is make the Lightroom or the box on the top. And for this you'll need a piece which is 9.5 times 3. Along the 3-inch side, score at 2.5, and then along the 9.5 side, score at every 1.5 inches. So 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5, and 9. Now with this piece you have some options as you did with the railings. So you can have this so that it is a box that you put a gift in, or what you may want to do is gut out the middle of each of these pieces so you're just left with a frame similar to how I've done my railings, and you could put a tea light in the top. So I'm going to have mine as a box, and I'm going to fold and burnish along all of the score lines. So we're going to create our hexagonal shape. If you have your piece in this orientation, we're going to start by removing the bottom left-hand corner. And as we've done previously with some of our previous pieces, we're just going to take a wedge from the ends, like so. And then we're going to cut up each of the 1/2-inch score lines within the bottom tab, and then take a wedge from each section to create our glue tabs. So we'll add glue to our 1/2-inch glue tab. So I'm going to add my glue onto the glue tabs. Again, I've cut the glue tabs so I'm happy they're not going to be overlapping at all. Then I'm going to sit this in the middle. Like so. Just get it, that looks pretty good. I can pull it into shape because I can get the sides to match up with the sides. I'm happy with that, and then once I'm happy, I'm going to push that down and then just go in and burnish down the tabs. So that's the box in place. Now if you do want to make a base for the box or to go on the inside of the box, I will just quickly go through making a hexagon the right size. So you'll need a piece of cardstock which is 3 inches by 2 5/8 inch, and along the 3-inch side make a pencil mark at 3/4 and 2 1/4, and do that top and bottom. 3/4 by 2 1/4. Along the 2 5/8 inch side, make a pencil mark at 1 1/4 plus a 1/16. So 1 1/4 plus a 1/16. Rotate 1 1/4 plus a 1/16. And I'm just going to join up all of those pencil lines. And then, as we did with the larger hexagon, we're going to join up the pencil marks around the outside, and you should find that each of the sides of your hexagon are 1.5 inches. So if you want to add that as a base on the outside of the box, cut that around and then adhere that to the tabs. If you want to add it so it fits inside the box, I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut about 1/16 of an inch inside the pencil line. So this will then fit inside the box and cover the tabs. If I bring this in, that fits nicely in the bottom and covers the tabs. So I will glue that into place as I've made it. Okay, the final thing is going to be the roof. Next, we're going to make the rim for the lid, and you'll need a piece which is 9 1/8 times 1 inch, and along the 1 inch score at 1/2 inch. Now we are going to be working in 1/16 for this, so you might want to use a ruler, or you might want to just use the downward tracks on your scoreboard. We're going to start by scoring at 1 3/8 plus 1/16. So that is going to be 1 1/4, 1 3/8. So it's the small track to the right of 1 3/8. So I'm going to put my pencil mark there, shift the piece along so the pencil mark's on a track, and score. And I'm going to follow this process at every 1 3/8 all the way along. And if I need to move my track to a full number to make it easier for me to calculate the 1 16, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to make life any more difficult for myself than I need to. So I've moved this along to the 2 inch track. So that'll be 1, 1 1/4, 1 3/8 plus 1/16. Move that to a track. So I'm going to do this all the way along. So I can move this track back to the 3 inch track. So I've got a full track to work with. 1 3/8 plus 1/16. Move that to a track. So I'm going to move this across to the 5 inch. 1 3/8 plus 1/16. But I did try the rim working on 1 3/8 and it just wasn't working. So that's 4 sections. And then when you get to the end section, if you rotate 180 degrees and score at 1/2, this last section will be the right length. Fold and burnish along all of your score lines. So we're going to start by removing the bottom right hand corner and then take a wedge from the section that's left behind. Keep that on the right hand side, and then we're going to cut up each of these 1/2 inch score lines, and then we want to take a wedge from the ends of each of these glue tabs. Get rid of any of your pencil marks that might be on the outside if you have them, and we're going to join this piece up and then join that together. Whilst that's drying, we'll work on the top part of the roof. You'll then need another scrap of cardstock. We're going to make another template. You'll need a square of cardstock, which is 1 1/2 inches square, and you're going to mark along one of the 1 1/2 inches at 3/4 of an inch, like so. I'm going to cut from the bottom right and the bottom left hand corners up to the pencil mark to create our triangle. I'm then going to take some of my red cardstock. I'm going to sit my triangle onto the cardstock like so, and I'm going to draw around the triangle. Actually, I'm going to draw around on the reverse. So I'm working on the back of the cardstock because you can see this has got some fade marks in it. So I'm going to draw around like so. Then I'm going to move my triangle around, and again, we want to end up with 6 of the triangles joined together. So that's my 6. You'll need a piece of cardstock which is roughly 3.5 by, if you did it 3.5 by 3.5, you could get all of the 6 on. So I'm going to take my stylus and ruler, and I'm going to put my score lines in to separate the triangle pieces. If I have my unmarked section here, that's my smaller triangle. You don't need to do this left hand one because that's going to be a cut line, but we need to score along all of the remaining lines, running from the centre to the outer edge. And you can go beyond the outer edge if you think it's easier. And you want to do the last line as well. Okay, so once your score lines are in place, take your scissors, and I'm going to start by cutting around the bottom to create the hexagonal shape. Okay, so I've cut that out. I'm going to cut up the left hand side of the first triangle like so. And now we want to create a glue tab. So I'm going to cut roughly 1/2 inch away, remove that section, and then shape the bottom. So I've ended up with a piece which looks like this. So now if we fold and burnish, I'm going to do it this way round so I don't have the pencil. Flip that over. You want to just make sure that the tab is going to sit in, and the shape of the tab, you've cut the wedges so that you're not going to see anything. So I'm just going to trim that slightly, that's hanging over. That's like so. Add glue onto the glue tab and join up top of the roof. And now we're going to add glue onto the glue tab of the rim. We're going to add it to the inside of the triangle section of the roof, but the roof will slightly overhang the score line. So I've added glue onto the glue tab, and I'm going to stick that to the inside of the triangle. And I'm going to have about 1/8 of an inch hanging over the edge. And I'm going to do that into all of the sections. So I'm pulling the rim out as I glue. And I'm just going to try and get it as equidistant as I can. So that's going to sit in there like so. Burnish the tabs down. So it doesn't matter if it's not quite the same all the way around. It's a handmade project at the end of the day. I'm quite happy with that. And then once that's dried, you should find that your roof sits nicely on the top like so. That's the outside of the lighthouse done. And we want to make the box element that's going to go on the inside. Next, we're going to make the inner box, and I have a piece of packaging to make a template, and this is 6 3/4 by 2 3/8. Along the long side, score at 1/2 inch. Rotate so the 1/2 inch tab is at the bottom, and make a pencil mark at 1/2 inch and 1 7/8 inch. And then, as we did with the first template, we're going to cut this into shape. With this one, our glue tab's going to be at the bottom rather than at the top. And then we're going to follow exactly the same process as we did with the outer edge of the box. So we will draw around this 6 times, adding a glue tab where we need to separate sections. Put in our score lines to create the inner section of the box. So I'm just going to shape this glue tab. So I'm going to bring in my first piece of cardstock, and as I did before, in fact, I'll line this edge up here, draw around this one. So I'm going to follow exactly the same process. So I can fit 3 on there, and then I'll do that another 3 times. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to score on the right hand side of each of the pieces. So again, the same process. Take your scissors, fold and burnish. So then, as we did with the first box, we're going to add this one together. Then you want to take your hexagon, your large hexagon template, and we're going to draw around that to create the base for this inner box. So that is going to become the base for this box, and we'll pull the piece into shape. Add glue onto the glue tabs, sit this on the top, Flip that over and just go down on the inside and burnish down the tabs. So now if we bring in our outer section, you can see that fits nicely over the top, and then this lid obviously sits neatly in the top like so. So now the box is just ready for any additional decoration and elements that you might want to add. So I am going to get on with that and then I'll come back. Here's the finished box. You can see I've just added some mirror card on to create the look of windows, and then I've added some red card stripes around the outside, and I created these by cutting down the template for the side into like 2-inch blocks, and then I drew around those and created strips to go around the outside, much the same way as we created the outside and the inside of the box. So there is my finished project, and overall I'm really happy with how this one has come out. So there we have our project for today. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel, and until next time, thanks for watching.